Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are tonight's entertainment.
Sound good?
Yes, sir! I know who I am!
Did IQs just drop shot while I was away?
I have a plan. I like this shit.
You know, it's exciting.
Dance off, bro.
It is your
Me and you.
destiny.
Welcome to the Atlantic Screen Connection Podcast.
Let the games begin.
Hello and welcome to the Atlantic Screen Connection Next segment. I'm Jason,
I'm Lee.
and this week, obviously for the next segment, we're not going to be alone. We're going to have a pretty brave man out from LA. Everyone, I want you to say a warm welcome to Collin Llewellyn from the Another Film Podcast. Hello, Collin.
Hello, thanks for having me. This is very exciting stuff.
You sound positively overwhelmed.
Yeah, no, this is going to be fun, man. Excellent. All right, so what's the weather out in LA today?
It's a crisp 54 right now.
I don't know what that is. I don't work in Fahrenheit.
It's,
Nah, neither
what
do
is it,
I.
like
Oh,
11?
Celsius,
I don't know. Fucking weirdos.
Ouch.
Oh.
You backwards Europeans.
That's the United States, how progressive they are. They're like, you know what? We don't like any new shit. Fuck it. We're going to stay with gallons and inches.
We refuse to change, and that's why we're in this mess.
Yeah. All right, cool. So, Collin, tell us a little bit about your show with Judd.
Yeah, it kind of started with this idea of like, I like old movies, classics, if you will, and
Right.
I noticed like the general conversation about film online and like your standard YouTube channels and whatnot really steer more toward like blockbusters. Like there's 100 shows about Marvel and whatnot, and I was like, well, what if how do I talk about those movies, but also talk about some of the stuff that gets me more excited? So basically the idea is that we take two movies, a contemporary and a classic, and just discuss what cinematic DNA they share. So sometimes that's, really on the nose, really easy stuff to talk about, like La La Land and Singing in the Rain, but an episode we just recorded that I'm really excited about, we're doing a Western episode, but we're doing the assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford and McCabe and Mrs. Miller, which is sure to win us the longest podcast title in history award.
It's going to be one of those things that it's going to be 3 dots after the first 3 words. And people will be like, okay, what's going on? It's
The
gonna be
coward and then ...
Yeah.
Exactly.
So basically,
stuff.
and it's a good way to talk about movies that are coming out now or that came out in like the last 10 years. Like, get us excited, but it's also a good way for us to, I hope, we have a small listenership, but I hope that somebody out there who likes listening to us talk about stuff will go get McCabe and Mrs. Miller or, watch something that they probably wouldn't have watched in the first place.
Yeah, I like to volunteer myself as one of those people, because I actually do. I listen to the show regularly now, and I really enjoy it, so I immediately recommend it to our listeners.
Thank you.
But I'm not super versed in classic films, so I'm always fascinated to hear how that sort of ties into the films that I'm more aware of. So it works perfectly for me as a format, but then on top of that, you just have a great rapport with what you watch, and your recommendations are genuinely good. Like I figure off the back of you talking about Mad Men is now why I've started watching Mad Men, and after that I'm going to be looking at Girls, like you have done that, and then there's all these like sort of classic films obviously that I need to watch at some point.
Yeah, and one thing that I'm really passionate about is like the history of the picture business. So
Right.
Yeah.
So it's a good way, like, on this last episode, I go kind of deeper into like the new Hollywood movement and the context of why, Robert Altman was making this anti-Western. And so it's a good way for me to just talk to the air and feel like it's being productive because nobody else wants to hear me talk about this.
I mean, I think that's why most people get into podcasting
Sure.
anyway, because there's like, my girlfriend's sick of hearing me talk about specific camera angles, and so maybe I should find someone who doesn't mind hearing me talk about that shit.
Yeah, could put up with it.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, yeah, I listened to pretty much every one of your episodes as well. I think the only one I haven't listened to right now is the one on Star Wars and Akira Kurosawa. I'm going to get to that, but I remember the latest one that you guys put out was The Apartment
Punch
and
Drunk
Punch
Love.
Drunk Love.
Yeah,
that was fun. So anybody who's listening to this right now, head over to Another Film Podcast with Collin Llewellyn and Judson Grant. You guys are in for a treat. It's a really, really fun new podcast. And I'm hoping that they record a fucking promo so I can put it on our show every week.
We will. We've actually been discussing that. I forgot to bring it back up with you guys.
So this week is going to be a pretty charged discussion, I think. Teaser trailer came out. I don't remember for what, though.
Yeah,
so.
It escapes me.
The new Ryan Johnson movie.
Right. It's the follow-up to Looper. That's what it is.
Yeah, obviously. The Rainmaker, he grows up. He turns out to be Bruce Willis as well. So then they have to work that out. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah. But before we get into the conversation, what I'm going to do right now is take a quick break. I don't want to talk to Lee anyway. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to set up film quotes read by Tweens. Stay tuned.
I need your clothes, your boots, and your motorcycle.
Hi everyone, this is Tim Costa.
I'm Hermano da Silva.
And this is Walter Vinci.
And together we are the First Time Watchers Podcast.
Each week we choose a movie to review that none of us has seen.
Watch it together.
And then discuss.
These movies could be new.
Or old.
Or on our list of shame.
You can find us on iTunes by searching for the First Time Watchers Podcast.
As well as on Stitcher.
And we love interacting with our listeners, so if you have any suggestions, send us a tweet.
An email.
Or post to our Facebook page.
We'd love to hear from you.
That's right. I mean, it's all about interaction.
And talk about what we love, movies.
And you don't have to worry about us going on and on about this and that and the other. And let's talk about this minutiae here.
Shut up.
And I wonder who the gap can
God damn it, shut up.
I think that's enough, Walter.
Oh my God.
Go by during the credits.
Okay, welcome back. So that was Jason's Kids, obviously, reading us more hilarious quotes by Tweens. And so we're going to go straight into what we watched this week. And we're going to jump to Collin. He's going to let us know maybe the most important thing that he would recommend from this week's viewing. So take it away, sir.
Most important. Well, I mentioned the two movies I watched in preparation for my podcast, which I think would be the two films people should go watch and then listen to my podcast. However, I watched some other stuff. I won't go into it in detail, but I did get to see my favorite movie of all time on a 35 millimeter print out here in LA. There Will Be Blood, and that's always a treat. Whenever that plays, I go see it. Even if I just watched it yesterday.
I would love it to come to cinemas. I was going to say, I've never seen a PTA film in cinemas, but I've seen Junin lately, so
there you go.
I have actually, technically.
There's a scene in the movie where he's on the train with HW, and he's a baby.
Yes.
And he used this lens from like the 1910s. And when you watch it on like Blu-ray, you can kind of notice that it looks a little different, but on film it pops and it's got that like real hazy, old school look to it. It's gorgeous.
Nice.
Awesome.
I watched Lion. Did you guys see that movie?
Yeah, I've seen that back in the hype up to Oscar films.
What did you think of it, Lee?
It was okay.
Yeah.
I appreciate that the story, these are real people, especially the main guy. He's a real person with a serious thing happened to him, and it was very tragic. And I think that the real story behind it is one it's genuinely fascinating and incredible. Like one of those sort of, when you hear about it, you can't believe it actually worked out, like Google Earth finds your family kind of thing. I found the first half of it was absolutely great. I loved the child's like journey through adoption and stuff like that. I thought that was like terrifying, absolutely terrifying. But when he grows up to be this sort of genuinely abrasive, difficult guy who just doesn't seem to get it, but the film kind of pats him on the back for continually turning people away and not looking at his family dead in the eyes that he has or anything. And we never really make it to a point where we see him actually appreciate his foster parents and stuff like that.
Yeah, it felt like they kind of took some shortcuts to me. Like he's sitting in class talking about cricket, and then he all of a sudden decides that this is the most important thing to him. And
you're right.
We didn't get any time with adult I forgot his name, but the adult version of the character before he starts this like obsessive journey. And so like you said, this isn't a good criticism, but it felt like this could have been like one of the best 6-episode miniseries to ever be made if that's the way they wanted to do it.
Oh, absolutely.
Because the last hour of it just went quick, and
Yeah, we spent no time there. We don't really learn to know this guy, but we have to sort of try to pick the pieces up, and we're introduced to his family life with his brother, and we don't actually. There's not a significant thing said there. It's just sort of like, look at how damaged his brother is. And I mean, that's A, probably based on reality, and B, entirely true on how that affects the character. But all we see of it is a snapshot of the main guy just not liking him and nothing else,
It's like Rogue One, where everyone's like, no, you got to read the book, and then you'll understand why the characters are like that.
Yeah, exactly. It didn't stand on its own, absolutely. Not that I'm saying that about Rogue One.
That's my own Star Wars baggage. I'm trying to stay on theme today.
Yeah, this is foreshadowing.
I have to be honest with you guys. I had no interest in seeing Lion at all. It was on my list, but now, like, just after hearing this, I'm like, I don't even have to watch this fucking movie.
No, I did say that. I mean, I think the story behind it's fascinating. That it deserves reading into because it is a genuine great thing. But I think that if you read the Wikipedia page on it, you will be as informed as the film informs you, and you'll save a lot more time.
Yeah, unless you're just like a cinematography junkie, because Greg Fraser does some cool work in this. But
it is some good work, definitely.
But other than that, I was kind of like, I guess, disappointed with some of the because it had that Oscar buzz to it. So, but I'm watching it in April, so obviously I wasn't that rushed out to see it.
I don't know. My mom loves that stuff, and so I always have trouble getting into films like that because most of the time they don't make films like this unless they succeed. Right? There's supposed to be inspirational stories about like very hard times, but if you keep at it, then you'll finally, it's just basically a regular Hollywood story that we've seen time and time again. So every time I sit down to watch something like that, it's basically the same as porn to me. Where you're like, you understand where it's going, you understand the outcome, and you don't even know why you're watching it. You know what I mean? Yeah. So my mom is definitely not the person that's going to watch porn, but she's got her version of it in Lion.
Yeah, it's like a procedural. They're gonna catch the bad guy at the end.
Yeah, exactly. That's a much better example than mine.
I don't think so. I think comparing Lion to porn was fantastic.
But I think that's what it is. When you log into a movie like that, when you sit down to watch it, you're expecting it to follow a specific beats. You're expecting, first act to end a specific way. Second act is supposed to end at this place. And at the third act, the whole resolve is there. So, I mean, there's no real surprise. It's like watching a rom-com at that point. Andrew from the AB Film Review and The Last New Wave, he actually interviewed the producer of the film and the author of the book, who happens to be the boy, I forget his name. And I had fun listening to that interview because there's a lot of insight that goes into what this guy has lived, And so I think that if I could, I'd send people over to listen to Andrew's podcast on Lion. If ever you guys really want to have an in-depth kind of approach to Lion, I think Andrew at the AB Film Review would probably be the best guy to do it.
Sure, yeah. Our longtime listeners will recall he was one of the many voices on the Inherent Vice episode. So
right, exactly.
Yes, Collin. Any other films that have piqued your interest this week?
Oh, well, I did. I watched the 1946 film, Rita Hayworth movie, Gilda, which for most people might be most remembered from Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah, definitely in my case.
Rita Hayworth was also the pinup girl that he hid the hole in the wall with.
Yeah.
But it's a 40s noir movie, so it's like right up my sweet spot. And she like just watch this movie. Like if you like movies, that's all I have to say. Because I feel like I need to stop talking.
No, that's good, man.
That's a bad thing to think on an audio-based podcast.
They tuned in for you two, not for me.
No, but we got up for you, so.
Yeah. Fuck what the listeners think. We're here for you.
Yeah, exactly.
We seldom think about what people actually want to hear. We just like talking.
Yeah, exactly. Lee and I, that's what we do. We tune in to stare at each other. Lee,
yes.
What did you watch this week?
Yeah, so I mean, I watched Ghost in the Shell, but we're not talking about that.
No, we're not.
Yeah, we're not talking about that. I watched the early launch of Rick and Morty's third season.
All right.
I think I'll talk about it more when the third season actually launches, because I feel you can't technically legally get that episode online anymore, or I feel like I'd be just sort of prodding people into a bad position if I say watch this episode when it's not technically available. Okay. But for that small day, that window of opportunity, it was a thrill ride. I watched it twice because I love Rick and Morty. It's fucking hilarious. Immediately, I got one good quote out of it. Ghoulish overkill. I think I'll use that for the rest of my life.
Amazing.
As a description of like
Twitter
the exaggeration that you use to anything on Twitter. Ghoulish overkill summer. That's amazing. So I'm gonna use that forever. I'm up to episode 7 in the first season of Mad Men. Man, what is Mad Men? It is the weirdest show. It is it's incredibly well written. Its format is bizarre. It's like things happening. The show, there's not there's no arcs or anything. There's no specific direction each episode wants to take. Most of the time, it's just a bunch of conversations and happenings in the 60s that just sort of blur into each other, and it's fascinating. And I can't stop watching it, but I don't get it.
Look, the key to Mad Men is to watch it 100 times. Just watch the series all the way through, and then 6 months later, you're gonna get this little itch in the back of your brain, and you're gonna pick a random episode in season 2, and the next thing you know, you're on season 7 because you just kept going.
Oh, Mad Men, yeah, I loved every minute of Mad Men. I was never bored with that show. It's actually even when Don, you think that he's actually getting better as an individual, like a person, he's becoming a little bit more, of a relatable character. He goes in a direction where you're like, oh, fuck, no. I was just starting to like you.
Good. Yeah, I like the fact that he's not incredibly likable. I like watching him for that.
Yeah.
He's a fascinating character for the sheer value that he isn't really relatable in any way.
Yeah, but I mean, even the fact that he's got, two identities, if you will, you never know which one you're getting on any given episode, right? He could actually be, Don Draper, or what's his alias?
Dick
again?
Whitman.
Whitman, there you go.
Dick Whitman,
and so you're like, are we seeing Whitman in this case? It's always kind of wrestling with those two sides of his personality, and it's great, man.
And I honestly, obviously I'm a super fan, but I've people with clearer heads have told me the same thing. I don't think that there is a dip in quality. I think some of the early seasons are my favorite over some of the later seasons, but I don't think there's been a show that's run as long that stayed as consistently excellent as Mad Men.
I agree.
Incredibly comforting to hear.
Oh, that's it.
Because you look at it and you say, oh, there's 7 seasons of people in suits talking, but but just keep going.
I guess the fact that it, that sort of non-linear approach to storytelling it takes really benefits in that case, because you don't feel like you're watching specific episodes. It's all just one long continuous episode of these lives, and you just pick up points. Things resolve themselves a couple of episodes down the line, some maybe a season later. I get the impression that some stuff is going to be dropped and never come back. That kind of stuff, and you're kind of going, yeah, okay. So it's you just keep watching. You're strung along, and you never question I'm going back to season 2, episode 5, because that's the one where they go to Chinatown or some shit.
No, man, I agree with Colin. It doesn't dip in quality at all. It doesn't get better, but I like the fact that it kind of stays even.
If I could go back to what I was watching just for a quick second. Sorry.
Go ahead.
We were talking about TV. I forgot about TV. I'm rewatching Deadwood, and I don't know if either of you have watched the show.
I haven't watched it yet. No, apparently it's
Never
really
watched
good.
it.
I really want to, if I had time and more intelligence, I really want to write a book about Deadwood, Mad Men, and The Wire as the story of American capitalism. And
wow.
It's
that'd be so cool.
Those 3 shows are woo. Anyway, keep going.
Let's do that. Let's get all 3 of us on it. We'll write a book all together.
I'll help with the Mad Men side of things.
Cool. I really want to get to Deadwood. The Wire, it's always terrible. I always feel terrible when I talk about The Wire because I'm a white guy. And everyone's well, of course.
That. We're all white guys, Jason.
People are always like, oh, of course all white people are going to like The Wire. I'm like, well, but it's good storytelling. You know what I mean? I understand both sides of the story, and I really appreciate it. And at the same time, I find that for the black community, the injustices that they're going through, I don't see them as bad. You know what I mean? That's the thing. They're good for what they're doing, and they're taking care of each other, and it's the same thing on the other side. If anything, the police side of things is way more corrupt. And I think that's what The Wire is trying to point out, is that the white people are the fucking pricks throughout the entire goddamn series.
Well, that would be like...
that seems about right.
That would be the through line of this like book in my head, is like the discovery of gold in America and how that leads to mass consumerism, and then you use Mad Men to explore that. But then how our structures of consumerism and capitalism in America weighs down in this systemic way on Black Americans, and how that leads to the
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. No, it's good stuff, man. I'd read that. I'd even watch a documentary on it where you just kind of plug in specific scenes that
I'd be right
parallel
there.
each other. You know, if you
maybe
take
I'll
the
make a
scene
video essay.
Yeah, well, it's getting the rights to that. I always try to upload when we did I did an episode on Clockwork Orange at one point, and I had kind of put a whole video together, and I just kept getting flags from YouTube. This copyright infringement. I was like, I'm not doing anything. This is criticism. So anyway, sometimes video essays, you have to work your way around it.
Yeah.
Anyhow.
Yep.
Lee, moving on. What else did you watch, man?
Oh, yeah, okay, so yeah, the one thing I did want to sort of push people towards watching, my main recommendation, because I don't need to recommend people to watch fucking Mad Men. Everybody's going to recommend that. As was what happened when I brought it up and you both jumped on like, oh my god, Mad Men, yeah!
Yeah.
So I think the hype is real for Mad Men. I don't have to say much, but I wanted to sort of back up the Netflix show The OA, which I burned through in a solid 3-day period with Maria, because there's some really strange conflicting opinions on it, and I thought I'd toss mine into the ring. Because it was genuinely one of the weirdest shows I've seen in a long time, just for what the hell it's trying to do. And a lot of people won't even have heard about it, and that's a real shame, because the creative minds behind it really fucking care about this show,
cool.
And it's some of the smartest writing I've seen in a tied together quasi science fiction narrative I've seen in a while. So I mean, it's this show on Netflix, The OA. It's about a girl who, her name's Prairie, but she actually goes by The OA, and she resurfaces after a long kidnapping back to her parents' house. She used to be blind, now she can see. And she won't tell the FBI where she was, but slowly she builds up a rapport with a bunch of kids in the general area, and she tells them her story. And her story happens to be this sweeping tale of when she had a near-death experience where she went to another plane of existence, and there was told, you can stay here or you can go back, but I'm taking your eyes. And essentially then she gets kidnapped and put into a position with 3 to 4 other people who have all had near-death experiences, and they're captured by the fantastic Jason Isaacs, who plays this creepy scientist who kidnaps these people and experiments on them, try and understand what ties near-death experiences to parallel dimensions. It is a fascinating show. It is a great character writing, great science fiction behind it, some really fun dual narrative going on from the modern day and the past. They kind of connect very neatly. It's a very metaphorical story as well. A lot of it, you can read it any way you want. It tries to point you in one direction, and it constantly tries to throw red herrings to mislead you, but there's this constant theme underneath it all, that it's all tied together by this paranormal science fiction thing going on. The only issue with it is that the first episode, which is an hour and a half, I think, is difficult. I think if you don't know what you're getting into, it's a strange one. It's very slow. It takes its time building the characters, the world. And you appreciate it in hindsight, maybe, but a lot of people will not get it for a long time, what the show's trying to do. But there's only 8 episodes. They're all great. The story keeps you breathlessly waiting for the next one, and it you could call it a day at the end of season 1 and say that ended perfectly. It ended perfectly, but at the same time the story continues. Desperately want to see what happens next. It's one of those things. I'm just on how does it work out? Where does it go from there? This could go anywhere, and you could look into the internet. It is dense with secret theories and interpretations about what characters are secretly what and who's scheming what, and it is fascinating what people picked up on that you might not even give a second glance to. It's a really, really well-devised show that somebody has taken very seriously to tell this very particular story, and I absolutely have to recommend it. It got a lot of bad criticism. It came out in December last year, and a lot of people compared it unfavorably to Stranger Things, and I can't imagine a more unfair comparison.
Okay.
They are totally different, like tonally, what they're trying to achieve. I love Stranger Things, but Stranger Things is a far more standard science fiction, paranormal story set with like a lot of homage to the 80s and that sort of world, and it does a great job at capturing one of the creepiness of those sort of suburban stories. This is not that. It's far more about these real human beings, the dynamic between them. And the science fiction just plays into interpreting what these characters mean in the world, and it's far more heady.
Yeah.
But it's also more rewarding to get invested in. So I absolutely recommend the OA. I think it's something that everybody should see, and it's something that I'm glad we kind of stumbled on and knew nothing about. It's absolutely worth people's time.
Awesome. I'm a big fan of Britt Marling. I've watched her movies.
Oh yes.
Right,
she makes a lot of interesting stuff. So
I've never heard of her.
I didn't even know she was in that.
Mind. She wrote it.
Really? I'm watching it.
And she's the star of it. So I mean, she's fantastic. Absolutely.
Have you seen Another Earth?
Yeah.
No.
Man, fuck, I love that picture.
Really?
It's so good. If you like good storytelling, which you were always talking about scripts and how people write and stuff like that, Another Earth is great. Even The Sound of My Voice feels like an M. Night Shyamalan film that he didn't do, and it's on a level where you're like, oh fuck, there's a twist at the end, where you're like, you're not expecting most of these things to come,
It's always got that vibe. That's what I mean.
Okay.
It's one of the best written shows I've seen in a long time.
Did you see The East?
I own it. I bought it, but I hadn't gotten around to watching it yet.
That's another one that got a lot of mixed reviews, but that was my first Britt Marling experience, and I really like that one too. It's about she's an FBI agent who goes undercover in this environmental terrorism cell.
Right.
And they're dumpster diver hippies, but they're also gonna blow up these oil companies and shit. But her and her writing partner, who did the OA, have been writing these movies together. And when I heard she did a series, I was excited. But
yeah, the writing partner, I forget it's his name.
It starts with a Z, but it's very long.
Yeah, it begins with a Z. He directs the entire series back to front, so it's really like a long form film. It's got the same singular vision as well.
He's the guy who directed The East.
Yeah,
and The Sound of My Voice.
Cool.
So I'll get my Blu-ray. It's right here. We'll get his fucking name. There we go. His name is Zal Batman.
Batmangli.
There you go.
That's the one.
That's
right on.
Cool. So the OA, that was great. Cool, man.
Yeah, so that's my recommendation.
All right,
Jason.
I won't go into much because I really want to start talking about Star Wars. I watched this week. As I mentioned on the previous episode when we were talking about Under the Skin, if you guys, thank you so much. It's been great reception for Under the Skin so far. A lot of people have been sending a lot of recommendations. Actually, it was really cool. David Hart has been really pushing the episodes. Like, guys, get in, listen to this.
I know, it's ridiculous.
As I said on that episode, I had watched Fences, and so I don't want to get into it. I am probably going to rewatch it this summer because it really stuck with me. I loved it. We talked about legacy a little bit and how, that plays heavily into what goes on with responsibility towards your family. In the end, even if the experience with family is not necessarily something that was a positive one for you growing up, in the end, it's what you have. It's no matter what you got out of it, positive or negative, it is part of you, and you should honor that part to a certain extent. And I think that Fences is really good.
Unless you read it like a self-fulfilling prophecy, and it's a very depressing downward spiral, and then
that's the
you're
other
actually
side
supposed
I was
to disagree with the ending.
But at the same time, even if it is a depressing one, there are two lessons you can learn, which is both sides of the fence, if you will. And so
that's what's great about it.
I thought that was a great story. I started watching and I haven't finished yet. So 5 Came Back, the documentary that was put on Netflix about the 5 directors that went and filmed World War II for the United States. So to film the war because they felt it was their duty after seeing Gibbel's propaganda film, William Wyler and John Huston, who, funnily enough, when we were actually talking about... I
was just going to say, The Master.
The Master, exactly, yeah. You had a John Huston film in there about post-traumatic stress disorder. I have actually seen Why We Fight from Frank Capra. I think it was the second one. It was really, really interesting documentaries, and it was basically why these directors felt the need to kind of fight the Nazis with film because they actually realized that the Nazis were using film in order to brainwash an entire nation. They figured that in order to get people a little bit more aware of what was going on, because the United States wasn't doing anything about World War II at that point in time, they figured we need to show the people what's actually going on instead of avoiding it. And so the documentary, I can't recommend it enough. It's 3 episodes. They're about an hour each, and that's it. I haven't quite finished yet, but I'm looking forward to getting to it. I was just looking for the time. So 5 came back. What else? I rewatched The Force Awakens because that's awesome. I watched Louis C.K.'s latest stand-up comedy show called 2017. It starts out a little bit weird, but it turns into one of probably his best stand-up specials. So if you guys have a chance to do it, it came out, I think it was on April 4th on Netflix, so you guys can head out and watch that. And the last one that I watched was Sorrentino's Youth. I haven't finished it yet because I haven't had a chance. I had to get back to grading. Sometimes I take breaks in the middle of grading papers to just go do something interesting. And I started watching Youth. And I don't know, people were giving it a lot of flack for being like poorly written. The dialogue was a little sketchy and whatnot. And I have no idea what the fuck those haters are talking about because so far this movie is fantastic. The performances are great. And that's it. I think that the dialogue is really, really good. But obviously the biggest thing that I did watch this week is going to be the Last Jedi trailer. Or teaser. Sorry, teaser because...
Yeah, oh yeah, the distinction has to come in immediately.
Fucking...
Light. Darkness. A balance. It's so much bigger.
One truth. It's time for the Jedi to end.
Anyway, it's a teaser trailer, and it's not supposed to give you any story points or whatever the fuck it is. So, Max Landis, God, throw yourself off a bridge.
What did he say?
He went on a rant on Twitter talking about how a trailer is supposed to inform you about story beats. It's supposed to inform you about, like, give you a little bit of character development, what they're going to be doing. And I think he should stick to pitching films because if I look at the stories that he's written, the only one that's actually quite... Yeah.
It's the exact opposite of what I would want from a trailer is to know what the fucking film is. I don't understand that at all.
I'm positive he's a nice guy, but he should take the time to think about what he says as opposed to just go on Twitter and let his thumbs do the thinking.
Sure.
You know? Much the same to everyone on Twitter.
It's the Donald Trump age.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is, I guess. But I don't know. So, yeah, the biggest thing I watched was the Last Jedi teaser. And I loved it. And I'm not saying it did exactly what it needed to do. It gave you a little bit of a glimpse of what was coming. It's beat for beat the Force Awakens teaser, which is kind of cool. You see the same kind of motif coming. So I don't know. Let's get into it. What did you guys think? Let's start with Collin, man.
So for me, the thing I was most excited to see, just in general, was how this movie was going to look. I really wanted to see what the cinematography and the shot compositions of a Rian Johnson Star Wars movie would look like. And just already in like the opening bit was just so fucking cool. Like the slow fade in the rocks and the tilt up to Rey. But not only that, but just like the slow moving on the island to reveal them. You know, he's up top and she's down there twirling her lightsaber. And Judson pointed out that the shots are they take their time. You know, like JJ has that kinetic energy, which is exactly what Star Wars needed for like the breakout Disney era Star Wars movie. But Rian Johnson's slowing it down. He's slowing down the camera, and he's gonna dive deep into like the meat of what the story of this trilogy is gonna be in. And and you do get that in this trailer with the Luke narration. I think everything he says in the trailer does give you a little bit of what this is about, and it's about diving into the mythology of the Force, and it's about breaking the dogma of the Jedi. And it's super exciting.
Exactly. I don't see why people don't feel they're informed about the film. I think that is more information than you could possibly ever want. There, and there's exactly what I wanted to hear, that the story was going to fucking try and denounce the fucking black and white side of the Force, and because that was the shit that really dug home how dull and poorly thought out the prequel series was. Is that it's not that I want somebody to sit down and tell me what it is, it's just that I want there to be more to it than just there's a good side and there's a bad side. That's not reflective of the world we live in or any world that exists ever.
I went on like a little bit of like a Twitter rant thread on this because I watched it with my girlfriend a couple times, and basically the way I see it as what's presented to me, and knowing what Star Wars has been doing like in their cartoon show and in their books, like changing the ways they talk about the Force, is I see Luke as looking at the Jedi's interpretation of the Force. It's like people who think the Earth is 5,000 years old, and then he realizes, he says there's so much more, he's realizing no, the Earth isn't 5,000 years old, it's 4 billion years old, but there's also a universe that's like 13 trillion years old. So like and he's not going to understand it, but he's not going to form like a dogmatic principle and like this like society of monks who tell you not to get married or whatever.
Exactly. Good. Okay. But I mean, that's the thing. I want to go back to what you were talking about in terms of cinematography at the beginning there, Colin, because there are really important shots in this teaser that communicate really different messages, which is kind of cool. And I mean, if you take the first 3 shots that we see, like you said, Rey, falling down, putting her hand on like this hard rock. Okay. And then the tilt up towards her. But then the shot right after that is going to be a landscape of a rising sun or a setting sun. And so you have this landscape that can be either, like I said, the rising or the setting of a sun, which means either the dawn of a new age or the setting of an old one. Yeah, right. So you have that balance that's being created there, and then you'll have the touch of the earth, and then the shot from above, which is the sky. So you have this idea of connectivity between earth and sky, the ethereal versus the tangible, that it's going to be playing out there. And I was like, Jesus, this is cool.
As you're saying, you look at those shots and you look at just you have like 3 or 4 lines of dialogue, and everything you need to know about this upcoming film that everything else you experience when you fucking watch it.
Yeah, and I think
exactly, that's it.
He has that John Ford shot at the end, the searcher shot of Luke but think about what that shot's communicating to you with that line, the Jedi need to end. They're in the dark. Mm-hmm. The Jedi were in the dark. Luke's taking them to the light, and it's not the light side in the way that the Jedi interpret it, but he's taking them to show like the whole world is out there. And like the Jedi are just flat earthers. Like they're interpreting everything all wrong. And retroactively, if it goes this way, you could watch the prequels and it can like kind of pay off now.
Yeah, exactly, right? The prequels were my generation's Star Wars, and they're terrible, but I can never get past the fact that they're mine. So I mean, I'm always happy for them to be the story of the idiots,
Yeah. The midichlorians are just like the Catholic version of like, oh, you make a donation, you can get into heaven.
What I wanted from the teaser was that I wanted it to debunk the rumor that Luke was going to be a telepath in this. He wasn't going to speak with his voice, he was going to speak with the Force or something like that. I'd heard that somewhere on the internet. And it was just like, that's gonna kill this film for me. Why can't he fucking talk? He took a vow of silence. That doesn't sound like him. That sounds exactly against what he would do.
Yeah.
So why would he do that? Even Yoda didn't take some vow of silence, you know.
Well,
he was supposedly more in touch than fucking Luke was. So why? But that didn't happen, thankfully. So that's all I needed to know.
He's clearly like still working in the Force because he is training Rey in the trailer. So like I see like some overreactions from fans are like, there's no way they could end the Jedi. Then what are they going to do? Just not use the Force? But I don't think fans understand that like the Force exists outside Jedi. They just created a religion around it.
Exactly. It's so weird. We even get hints throughout the trailer. If you listen very carefully, you hear these other voices that are there. Did you guys pick up on that? These little remnants of what's been going on. But then you have Luke that's hovering above all this, like he's still trying to figure shit out. Yeah. Which I think that's when you were listening to the panel at Celebration when Daisy Ridley says, the one thing I can tell you is that sometimes when you meet your heroes, you're not getting what you expect, you know? And so I don't know if that she's actually saying that Luke is going to be reluctant to train Rey.
I'm sure he is. I mean,
I wonder if there's
he trained the guy who killed Han Solo. So I mean, I'm pretty sure he's not super dying to train another.
I wonder if she's kind of being a little meta there, telling the fans, don't expect Return of the Jedi Luke. You know, like you're gonna meet your hero again.
Yeah,
he's gonna be a lot different, and it's not gonna be all like, I'm a Jedi like my father before me. It's going to be, let me tell you what I've been learning for 30 years and how this changes everything.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's more like it. You know, the fact that he's reluctant to train her in the Jedi arts. Like, you know, I like that. I have a feeling that he's going to be an evolution of the defiant rebel that he was, you know? And that last line, you know, a lot of people are like, oh my God, the Jedi are ending. You said it perfectly earlier, Colin. It's not Luke giving up. It's Luke moving on, you know?
Yeah.
Let me ask you guys this. All this discussion about Luke and maybe abandoning the Jedi teachings, is there a shot he never uses that green lightsaber again?
I'm gonna guess he's got a white one now. He's upped his game because he made that like handmade fucking green one out of his own shit, and he worked all that himself in the space of like a month because he had to hurry up and do this fucking rescue hand mission thing. Now it's been 30 years. He's not gonna this piece of shit that he made himself. You know, he's gonna double down. He's gonna read some books and get a white one. You know, one that represents balance.
But you know why? You know why they're white though?
What?
The kyber crystals, I would actually like it, but I want there to be an explanation if he has a white one, because Ahsoka has two white ones. And the reason she has white ones is because she defeated two Sith. And the Sith, once you have that kyber crystal that's been kind of corrupted, if you will, whenever a Jedi repurposes it and builds an old lightsaber with it, it no longer has a color. It's been moved from the light side to the dark to a more balanced white. So if ever that does happen, and he does have a white saber, which I'd be cool, I would like it to be Vader's.
Vader's? Yeah,
he's basically repurposed. That would be nice. That would be a nice little touch where he would actually have his father's old hilt, but he's actually rebuilt it using the same kyber crystal that Vader had, and then he was actually able to ignite it white. Ren would be fucking pissed because that's the one thing he wants is Vader's lightsaber.
I had this
that's a good point.
I had this theory that like half people liked, half people hated, but that Luke doesn't actually use his lightsaber in The Last Jedi because when Kylo turned on him, he took his green lightsaber from him, and he has it all this time. So then in episode 9, when Luke's arc kind of comes to fruition and he ignites it, he's like Luke again in the sense that he's ready to embrace like his Jedi heritage in a sense, but also what he's also learned. And so it like kind of completes his sequel trilogy arc when he like turns it on in episode 9 in like the third act. I'm a stupid fan.
That's an exciting theory. I mean, this is the kind of thing that I like from these. There's a very clear distinction about what I don't like about this teaser coming out, and I do like. I do like discussion. I like speculation. I think that's fun. I think that's nothing wrong with like just imagining what could happen. I mean, you're building up a picture in your head that immediately the film's going to struggle to live up to or debunk because you already have your checklist of things you want to happen or think should happen or might happen. And then when you watch the film, 9 times out of 10, most of that stuff is just pure speculation coming from nowhere, and if you were right, then it would be very formulaic of the film to be able to be written by just any schmo listening who watched the teaser and went, bam, all the plot points, I got it immediately. I knew what was coming for The Last Jedi, but that I still think there's nothing wrong with discussion. I think discussion is a big part of what makes Star Wars films fun to enjoy, because there's a huge fan base of people from all walks of life and all different exposures to the series that all have something interesting that they've got from it and something that they want to impart, and it's just a fun experience to join in on that. What I don't like is just people shouting shit on Twitter, just 1,000,001 people rushing to the fore with the breaking news that the teaser's out and that they're the ones to break this exclusive story, that the poster is on Twitter, or that they're the first person to declare their disappointment in a teaser. I don't understand. I don't get it. That's not discussion. That's just shouting shit. That depresses me. It's something. It's the same shit that the Marvel and the DC fans do as well. Any huge fan base, because there's so many people all think so many things. The first instinct is to be the first person to just either shout out how much you love it, or denounce it, you don't want to engage with people. You just want to be heard as somebody shouting something. I'm of course guilty of it too. Everybody is, but it's something that I just try my best to steer away from. And when the trailer came out, and I just looked at Twitter and it's scrolled through 100 posts all saying the exact same fucking thing about I was disappointed. I thought there'd be more story. I mean, I was elated to see this film's going to be everything I want it to be, both for grand assumptions based on nothing. Terrible decisions to decide whether this film's going to be great or not. You don't decide from a teaser or a trailer. You watch the film. These are just advertisements. They're trying to get you to watch the film by showing you a couple of images, and then you go and watch them. It's a constant strive to take away building hype. I mean, you can't help it. It just happens. Even discussion does it. Everybody's guilty, but at the same time, there's something just about how social media has handled that forum of people. It doesn't do anyone any favors at all, engaging in a shouting contest about what the fucking Star Wars trailer was like. Take it more fun.
Collin was actually on your side. He was
preach.
Quote retweeting a bunch of people. Exactly. Yeah, he was quote retweeting a bunch of people saying like, "Calm the fuck down." Well, it's essentially was the main message.
I had a friend who was like, "Oh, I thought I'd see a little more. I just didn't really respond to it." And like people were telling him he was wrong for thinking that. And I was like, "Guys, like it's like essentially a minute 45 of disconnected images." Like the one thing Max Landis said, which actually kind of disproved his original point because it's a teaser, is he says it looks like a cinematography reel, and that's essentially what a teaser is anyway. Because it's disjointed, beautiful images that make you want to watch more. So yeah,
Collin was talking about the green lightsaber. What are the things in, and just as a forecast, just for fun, just so we can clear this out, what are the things that you're afraid of that might happen in 8 or 9 that you don't want to see or whatever? I mean, what are the things, like, without getting into like this better happen or not, but what are the things as the kid you are watching these movies?
What would disappoint you to see happen? The direction wise.
So my main fear, I say this all the time. I'm open to anything in movies and in franchises I love, as long as the execution is good. So they could kill Luke in the first 5 minutes of The Last Jedi if Rian Johnson executes that. All right, but my main concern, the one that like actually bothers me when I think about it, I am not a big fan of Derek Connolly or Colin Trevorrow so far. And the way that they write characters and in their movies, especially female characters, there's not a lot of maturity and there's not a lot of emotional resonance. And I am so obsessed with these new characters, especially Rey. I think she's like one of the better characters to come from from blockbuster movies in the last couple decades.
100% agree with
absolutely,
that.
And I guess I'm just really nervous about how they might handle her, especially given the fact that this could be the closing episode of this whole saga. And I don't know, it takes a village at Lucasfilm. Kathy Kennedy is one of the best producers ever. Rian Johnson's probably going to be heavily involved with the development of the movie, but I still get nervous and a little upset that they were chosen to finish this out.
I agree with you 100%.
I totally agree, yeah.
Colin Trevorrow, when he was selected, one of the things that he mentioned was that he was probably going to try to film a couple of sequences in space. And when I heard him say that, I was like,
oh my God, I totally forgot about that. That's fucking ridiculous. Who the fuck cares? Exactly.
It's like, what? Why would you do that? Star Wars has a bit to do with space, but what's the advantage of it doing that? Have you watched 2001: A Space Odyssey? It's not the same physics. What the fuck are you talking about? And so Trevorrow is just one of those guys that I feel like he played with his shit just a little too long when he was a child. And I don't know, even Jurassic World, like you were talking about, Colin, you were saying the development of his characters. Yes, he can direct action. Not a problem. I can give him that 100%. He's a very talented man when it comes to directing action. But the characters that he had, I was like, whoa, what the hell's going on here?
Has some of the worst characterization I've seen in a blockbuster film in a long time.
Yeah, so I 100% understand where you're
share that anxiety.
I support that. Yep, exactly.
My theory is, so episode 8 was supposed to come out next month. May 27th. And when they switched the release date to December, they kept the same production schedule for a May release. Like, John Williams has been scoring the movie the last couple months. So my theory is they kept that schedule for a lot of logistical reasons, I assume. Things were booked. But also, by the time the fall rolls around and they're amping up the movie, Rian Johnson doesn't have to be in the editing room until the 13th hour, 11th hour, whatever. But he'll actually, I'm hoping it's because they want him to be hands-on in the episode 9 development, because that will go into production next winter. And so I'm hoping they're writing their spit draft right now, where Rey's in heels and Finn gets eaten by a monster for way too long. But Rian Johnson's going to take a red marker to that and just take care of it.
Rey's in heels, that's amazing.
Yeah, that's it. And Luke's in this bubble.
And Jimmy Fallon's there for some reason.
Oh, Jesus Christ! Shooting it in space. That is the perfect concern. That sums it up really to me. It's just like how nobody cares and how to make nobody care. I entirely agree with Colin. I couldn't really genuinely put my finger. I don't really tend to think ahead of what films I want films to be. I as Colin was saying as well, that you're happy to come and go no matter what happens as long as they execute it well. I entirely agree. I don't even mind them killing off old characters. Even though I would hope they do it tastefully. And not just one film after the other. We just like the shock twist ending is another classic icon gets killed. That would wear me down a bit. But genuinely, I'm just hoping that it's a fucking good time. And also, my real fear was that Luke didn't speak. So they've already cleared that up. I'm not concerned at all anymore.
My main fear, I think, but it's not a fear or anything like that. It's not something that I wouldn't like. I'm getting older, right? And these are characters that I love, and seeing them go kind of sucks. And especially, like Colin said, one of his favorite characters is Luke Skywalker, and it's the same for me. And I know that eventually it's going to happen. I'm going to have to say goodbye to this character. And part of me, that means that part of my youth is headed out the door as well, And so I see Luke standing at that door, Searcher's style, and I'm like, yes, there's light outside, but I know that light, the sun sets eventually. And it gets me a little bit worried about where that could head. And I'm like, I know there's an eventuality. I don't know if it's going to be in episode 8 or episode 9. I'm hoping that he doesn't go, but there's a part of the kid down there that's just been like, don't do this. But at the same time, I understand. I mean, it's going to be logical that if he is the last Jedi and the Jedi must end, it really does mean that if he's around, as long as he's around, then the Sith can rise or whatever it is, you know? So there's going to probably have to be an end. Snoke has to go and Luke has to go. We just don't know how and when those things are going to happen.
Yeah.
So
pretty much. That's balance. That's how it works.
Exactly. And so that's why I'm like, ugh. There's a part of me that hopes that Chewbacca gets this bitch slap Kylo Ren once. Just in a weird, like, sucker punch style thing, you know, Uncle Chewbacca just whacking Ren.
This is like
fucking
therapy.
Kid. Exactly. You know, I'm hoping that helmet crushes Chewbacca that just stopped the shit out of him.
Bashes him to the ground and kicks the shit.
So,
yeah.
But other than that, I'm actually heading into this one in a very different manner than I headed into The Force Awakens, because as I was heading into The Force Awakens, I had the story I wanted in my head.
Yeah.
And then when I watched it, I was like, this doesn't make sense. That's not working. This isn't a... And I had my girlfriend and my 2 daughters, and I was walking out of the cinema going, meh. And my entire family told me, you're ruining this for us and for yourself. And I was like, okay. And so the next day I went back, you know, and I understood what the story's about. Then I started watching it, not as a Star Wars fan, but as a film guy. And I want to see what the hell J.J. Abrams was doing with the film. And then I realized exactly what he was doing, and I fell in love with that movie, and which is why I've watched it 25 and 30 times. And so I'm heading into The Last Jedi knowing full well that this is going to be a logical continuation of The Force Awakens. And I'm excited to see where it can go, good or bad. You know, I'm just looking for a really good story the same way as The Force Awakens is a good story.
There's less pressure for it to have to be good, I think, this time. I think that with The Force Awakens, it was such everybody needed it because the prequels were such a downer. They needed to see that Star Wars could still be good outside the originals. So everybody was forcing their pressures and opinions on that, and then that kind of muddied the waters a little, but ultimately it's a fantastic film. With this one, I think people are now more open to the fact that it's Star Wars. Just let it breathe, let it do its own thing, and don't fucking worry about it. Don't kick yourself too hard trying to work out, you know, what the fuck it has to be. Just enjoy it and see the fucking film, and if you don't like it, you don't like it. You like it, you like it. Everybody hopes they like it, but I mean, if they don't, so fuck. You got your Force Awakens. It's good.
So I guess that's it, you know. All right, Collin, thank you very much, man, for coming on and talking with us about Star Wars and Gilda and your show, man. I want you to plug your show. I want everyone to go give Collin Llewellyn a follow on Twitter. Yeah,
we're
so how about, man, plug on your stuff.
I'm at Collin Llewellyn. You can get the proper spelling from Lee. He knows how to spell it.
There's several G's.
And our podcast is at Another Film Pod at Twitter, Gmail, and SoundCloud. You can find it on iTunes. Check us out. We'd love to have more listeners listening to classic movie talk. And we're open to recommendations too. If there's something you guys want to hear about, let us know. We'll watch it and talk about it.
Cool. Anybody who's not following Collin on Twitter, he's a fun guy to interact with. He'll pop up a tweet every now and then, and you'll be like, what the fuck is this? And it just makes you laugh, so it's going to be great. Another Film Podcast is one that I like plugging. I head out to the gym, and it's one that I look forward to, and there hasn't been one in a while, so get working, motherfucker.
May 3rd.
May 3rd. All right, cool. So, Lee, where can we find you, sir?
Yep, you can find my reviews and general musings at bigpicturereviews.co.uk. Still doing that. The award that we're nominated for, I won't be attending the ceremony, unfortunately.
Right.
But it's for Atlantic Screen Connection through Big Picture Reviews. That's happening in London. I can't afford to go there. It's going to cost me something like £300 to do it. It's impossible this close to the wedding. But super excited to hear the result.
That'd be great.
That happens a couple of weeks from when this episode airs. So I mean, actually it's just 1 week. The week after this episode airs, that's gonna be announced. So that's pretty awesome. You can also follow me on Twitter at BigPicReviews. I am the more jaded of the two of us when it comes to social interaction. Where Jason accepts all comers, you have to tag me and want to talk to me, because I just don't tweet all the time. So but if you have a review or an opinion you want me to read, I almost retweet everything sent to me. Very forthcoming with that. Absolutely seek me out, because I'm not going to do it for you, my friend.
Alright, cool. My name is Jason Michael. You can find me at AtlanticSC on Twitter. Thank you so much, you guys, for tuning into the show. Obviously, you guys can find us on iTunes. You can find us on SoundCloud, Google Play now, Overcast. Lee and I were talking about that just the other day. Apparently, we're on Podcast Addict. I think this is just iTunes feeding all these other apps our RSS feed.
Also, Stitcher Radio.
Stitcher Radio. That's right. We're on that thing, too. Big shout out again to David Hart. Thank you so much for nice comments. Mike from War Machine vs. Warhorse. Had a great time with JD as well over at In Session Film this week.
Delightful soul.
Sheila was a fun one to interact. We had a fun time this week on Twitter. It was really, really funny. And Emerald Williams, another one. She's really, really fun too. So give her a follow. So that's it for us this week on AtlanticSC Next. And we'll be back with our regular show. We're going to be talking about the Fast and the Furious, or the Fate of the Furious, I should say.
Fate of the Furious.
And it's going to be the most pretentious fucking podcast on that film.
Wait. It's going to be wonderful.
It's going to be so insane. I've been researching familial dynamics post 9/11, and it's going to be a real fucked up.
You haven't even seen it yet. Wait till you see what the rich material that is present in that film. It's going to blow your mind.
Awesome, man. Excellent. So that's it for us again this week. Please say bye to Collin, and we'll see you guys.